Committee, and we're here because Sue wanted this collaboration meeting, and I thought it was a good idea, and so we're all here. The public is invited, and there's not too many here. So.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks for coming. With that, Sue, you want to say something, and then
Well, I'm brief, as is my way. So this is Tim Love with the Montana Forest Collaboration Network, and I believe there are 22 collaboratives in Montana. And since we're just getting started, I thought that this might be a direction we would want to go. So I talked to Gordy Sanders, the head of Pyramid, and he wasn't able to come, but he works with Tim, and so Tim was able to come and represent the collaborative.
Well, you know, thank you for the invitation, and it's always great to be over here in Phillipsburg. I just love this part of the world. And I am a native Montanan. I was born in Billington and raised in Missoula. We moved when I was in elementary school there. So just by way of a little background. And after high school, I was in the Air Force, and after that, I came home and went to the University of Montana and studied forestry. And because of my veteran status, I got a job with foresters right as a freshman when I got an appointment, which was, I was really lucky. And so spent 40 years with the Forest Service. And the last half of that 40 as district ranger at Seeley Lake. And so I've worked with a lot of people over in this part of the world, for sure, and worked with this county through the Tri-County RAC, which represents this county, Powell, and Deer Lodge County. Worked on a lot of good projects together. So that's my background. After I retired, I was invited to work for the Montana Forest Collaboration. Actually, at that time, it was the Montana Forest Restoration Committee that started in 2007, and I was, as an agency person, I was a part of that group. And that was a collaborative in itself. And it was comprised of about 35 people that were selected, and it included people that were often adversaries, that would fight in court, you know, really polarized, but the idea was to develop some restoration principles that they could agree on, that could be applied on national forest lands in Montana. And so this group of people worked for a year and developed 13 restoration principles that everybody could agree on, that, you know, for active management, this would be a good way to go. I brought a copy of this document, and I can pass it around, and you can look on the side and you can see who was represented in developing those principles. Now, subsequent to that, there were some local restoration committees that were formed. Again, a real mixed group of people, often didn't see eye to eye on things, but they did see eye to eye on these principles and practicing with them. And so different groups formed: the Bitter Restoration Committee, the Lowell Restoration Committee, the Lincoln Restoration Committee, and the Elkhorns out of Helena. And it wasn't a few years later, there's a lot of collaborative groups in Montana, really organic, you know, grassroots groups that had been working, not centric to these principles, but just interested in getting work done and working together and finding common ground and getting away from these, you know, long-standing, acrimonious debates that often end up in court, because fighting really doesn't work very well. And those of you in the agency know about that. So anyway, the state of Montana, the agency said, well, the organization needs to change and serve other interests, other collaborative groups in Montana that are interested in forest, active forest management, and restoration, you know. And when I say restoration, that encompasses an awful lot. That means vegetative restoration, that means watershed, wildlife, all kinds of things. It's not narrow like just decommissioning roads. So I want to make that clear. It's everything. And so in August of 2016, the organization changed and became the Montana Forest Collaboration Network, and it now serves collaborative groups across the state. And I'll talk about them. There are 22. Like I said, some had been in existence a long time, the Blackfoot Challenge, in Blackfoot Drainage, the Kootenai Forest Stakeholders, the Swan Ecosystem Center, now the Swan Valley Connections. Been around for, you know, quite a while, doing some things, doing some good things. So other groups then decided that they would want to participate. They saw value in having a network that serves the interest of these collaborative groups. And let me tell you, they are all different. And I think we talked about that. Some have been appointed by, like the 10 Mile South Helena was appointed by the city of Helena. They picked a real diverse group of people to try to help the community and advise the city commission on how to do restoration work in that watershed around Helena, particularly with an emphasis of reducing hazardous fuels and the risk of fire to the community. And their watershed, you know, is the watershed for the community, and so they were concerned about impacts to that from fire. So that's an example of one of the more recent collaborative groups was started by Ravalli County and by the Ravalli County Commissioners. And again, a lot of these, in those kind of groups, they're patterned after a RAC, Resource Advisory Committee. I think most of you are familiar with those, right? They're real diverse in makeup. They represent different interests, and so that was the nature of that one. The Custer Gallatin works, I think, on 9 different counties. There's a county commissioner for each county, I believe, that sits in on their group. But again, it's a mix of conservationists. Here, I'll just pass this around. I'm sorry. It's a mix of people that are interested in conservation issues, mainstream, the timber industry, in some cases mining. The Beaverhead Deer Lodge Working Group is another example of that. Again, with some commissioners involved. And some of them don't have any elected officials. They're just ordinary, you know, people that are interested in getting work done. People that are tired of the fighting. And again, if you've ever worked for an agency and gone through lawsuits and dealt with that stuff, it's not fun. And anybody who thinks that a lawsuit is fun is a person who hasn't been sued, or an organization that hasn't been sued, or an agency that hasn't been.
It's costly.
It's costly, and usually there are no clear winners. So, you know, that's the emphasis. Now, in terms of this organization, the Montana Forest Collaboration Network, we try to serve the interests of these real diverse groups across the state. And we do a number of things. And I'll share some of those with you. We try to serve their interests, but one thing we do is we have an annual workshop. In fact, we had 2 this past year, or we'll have 2 this year. And at that workshop, we, you know, develop topics, get information from those groups. What would they like to hear about? What would they like to know about? And then build a program around that. We had one, and we did a joint one with the Idaho Forest Restoration Partners. It's very similar to the Montana Forest Collaboration Network. Again, it's the collaborative groups in the state of Idaho, just like Montana, interested in getting things done. And we had a real successful workshop in Coeur d'Alene. Our workshop this year is in Kalispell, November 5th and 6th. Usually runs over 2 days. We'll start at noon on the 5th. It'll be at the Hilton Gardens in Kalispell, and it'll end at noon the next day on the 6th. Now, I know that's a bad time because that's the elections, right? And we tried to avoid that, but based on venue, based on getting people there, and it was difficult. So anyway, it unfortunately happened that way. So it might be hard to get elected officials because, you know, they'll be busy. The theme for this conference this year, incidentally, since I'm on the topic, is telling your story, communicating your story. Because, and we got this from collaborative groups around the state, they don't like other people telling their story. They want to tell their story. Instead of, you know, somebody that has some really strident views about collaboration, will, you know, may characterize it in not the right way. And so it's people that just want to tell their story. And so that'll be the emphasis on this workshop. So this is right down your alley. And of course the media helps tell that story, and it's collaborative groups working with the media and doing some things themselves, and we'll see some examples of that. As it happens, the Montana Watershed Coordination Council has the same theme this year. And they're meeting a little bit before us, and we just talked to them about that and coming up with some good ideas. So that's one of the things that we do. We produce an annual report, and I only brought, anybody wants these, just keep them. That's an annual report we produce, and it has a collaboratives, and there's a message, you know, from the regional forester and the Bureau of Land Management and the governor. You know, I gotta say this, from my experience, collaborative groups, these, you know, kind of grassroots groups of people of diverse interests that want to get things done, has support from across both aisles. Because people understand that if citizens want to do something, I mean, after all, right, that's who they work for. And people trying to solve problems is really what we all want to see. And so there's interest both on both sides of the aisle on this way and on this approach of getting solutions, finding solutions, instead of, again, fighting all the time. Now, we're not always going to agree on everything, that's a fact, you know. You all have spouses, you don't agree with your spouse on every issue, that's just life. But you can agree on a lot of things, and I think generally a lot of people do. Now, having said that, there are extremes that won't. They're empowered by conflict, and they're not going to come to the table because they don't believe it. They think that collaboration is collusion. And that's, you know, that's certainly not the experience I've had. I've gone around the state and met with people, and they're given their own time just like you are, and they're interested, and that's why they show up all the time and work hard, and they're interested to get something done. And again, that is appealing, and it's democracy at its core, frankly. When people sit down and work out differences and try to move forward. Again, you're not going to solve everything. There are issues that different collaboratives won't take on because they can't come to an agreement about that. So they don't. They just move forward on things that they do agree on. They're real civil, you know, and respectful of one another. I mean, after all, that's hopefully what our parents taught us to be, is to treat people with respect the way we want to be treated ourselves. It's pretty fundamental. So people that get involved in this kind of work it's hard work, it's not easy, but, you know, they have to agree that if you're going to sit down, you have to be civil about it, or else it's not, you know, it's not going to work. It's one of the recipes of getting along with your neighbors. So, the workshop, an annual report, and that's just, you know, informational kinds of things, but again, we'll pick topics. And this year, the collaborative groups will report out, it'll be more of a common theme. That was our first report, including collaborative groups to describe what they're doing, who they are. Some are old, some are young, you know, this diversity that exists. But this year we're asking each of the collaborative groups to give us, you know, something that, a success. And the success may be just formation. Sanders County Collaborative is a new organization, and so is the Valley County Collaborative. So that just forming was a success. So we're asking them to tell us about a success. In a lot of cases, there'll be projects. the Whitefish Range Partners worked with the Flathead National Forest, and 90% of the recommendations they made to the Flathead National Forest were adopted into that plan. That's a success in their eyes. And again, that group is really diverse. There's motorized interests, there's wilderness, there's this and that, but they came together, and that's a success for them. Some are real, frankly, most are project-oriented. They're interested in a project, getting something done, you know, and it may be a mix of things. It could be a timber sale project, could be some watershed restoration, some wildlife habitat improvement, or some road improvement. You know, it has multiple kinds of benefits. And I would say the majority of all of the groups I work with, that's their focus. Some forest plans, but most of them are projects. Some groups are interested in only what's happening in their county. Other groups are broader than that. In fact, the Mineral County Resource Coalition just sent a letter to the Beaverhead Deer Lodge National Forest on a project, I think, that's on this district. I just saw it recently. So you would think Mineral County Resource Coalition would be just focused on Mineral County, but they're not. They're going to make comments about things here and there. Ravalli County is going to be very focused on their counties. Gallatin, Custer Gallatin is going to be focused on all those counties. Beaverhead, Deer Lodge, again, projects that are related to what they're doing. So in the Kootenai Forest stakeholders, Sanders County will focus on what they're doing. They're all different. Like I said, 10 Mile South Helena will focus in on the community of Helena itself. The Lincoln Restoration Committee, those are just examples. But, and again, that reflects some of the diversity. Okay, workshops, annual reports. We prepare position papers, and this might be an area that you're interested in, on subjects. Most recently, we produced a paper on the wilderness study areas. Now, it is clear that that's a topic that has some political dimensions to it, I'll say. And so the collaboratives wanted to know, what would the Montana Forest Collaboration Committee think about this? But we're not taking a political issue, that's our position, that's a fact. No, we don't do that. You know, that's for people to decide what they want to do. It's not for the collaboration network to tell people this is wrong or this is right. We don't do that. But we do inform people about a subject. So one of the most recent papers, again, I only brought a few, all of this stuff is on our website, montanaforestcollaboration.org. You can pull it off. It's all there, but I'll send a couple of these written. Now, this paper was written to talk about wilderness study areas, etc. Prior to that, we produced one on inventory roadless areas. Now, the Forest Service reviews all of these documents, so it reflects, it's the accuracy of regulations and policies and procedures. There's nothing, you know, it's all legal, it's all technically correct, and here's one we had worked on inventory roadless areas. I'll pass these around. Now, that subject came up because there's a number of collaboratives in Montana that wanted to do some work in inventory roadless areas, but they weren't sure what this policy and regulations allow. So we worked together and developed that, and that gives a range of activities. Now, why this particular one? Well, because a lot of these inventory roadless areas join communities or private property. And what they could do for fuel mitigation and thinning and such, that's what this is really for. And so we produced that one. Now, we've produced a whole bunch, frankly, on different subjects. And I'm going to pass around a set of those. Again, you can get these off the website, no problem, print them. They're for your use. I'll send around a couple sets this way.
I wonder if Heidi could have one copy of each so that there is kind of a library that we have. Do you think that's a good idea? You know, that she, make sure that she has one.
Yeah, somebody for the committee.
Right, for the committee.
Here's another set.
So what do we need? We want a copy of all of what you've got? Or?
Let's see, well,
Each one of
Yeah, I only made 4 of those, and there's 4 complete sets.
these. You say it for
yeah, yeah, okay, you got that one.
But you might want to keep these. And you can see, a lot of them are, you know, how do you create a charter? Because that's where some of these groups are. How do you organize? What do you do? How do you keep notes? How do you facilitate? It's really, you know, sort of basic information on collaboration. Now, we have a few others in the works right now. One is being prepared on Good Neighbor Authority, where the state of Montana and the Forest Service, and there's opportunities for the Bureau of Land Management to work together where the state of Montana actually manages some Forest Service timber sales for the Forest Service. So that's one that's coming up. There's one on the omnibus bill that was passed recently, and it's going to talk, it's a summary of the provisions of that bill and that legislation. So people can read it and understand what the heck that meant, right? What's this fire borrowing, what is that? This paper, and see, these are very concise and brief. Now this one was tough, right? This is the longest one that's been written on the wilderness. Oh, here's 2. Oops. So, because it's a complicated and it's an involved subject, and it needed a decent explanation. Does this all make sense?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, no,
Now, if I'm not making sense, you just say, what? Okay. So,
Do we ask questions when you're?
Anytime.
Waiting for the.
anytime. Yeah. Also, there's, like I was going to say, I'll just finish with this and then go ahead. There's going to be one we're working on now on stewardship authority, stewardship contracting, because there are still some organizations and groups that are really not familiar with that. The Cooperative Forest Landscape Restoration Program, there'll be one. Some groups work with that program. So there are topics that groups are interested in. We're not taking a position, here's information. And you guys and gals, you make decisions. That's not our role.
I have a question. I come from a logging family.
Sure.
And how successful is collaboration with the logger to get good Forest Service sales? Because we get litigated. And,
Oh, yeah.
and we're tired of that. Now, I noticed in California, collaboration's working great down there. Oregon, because the environmentalists are coming to the table and saying, we should have worked with the Forest Service.
Right.
Look what we did to the forest by litigating so much.
Sure.
So now California wants to get 30 sawmills going down there because they have a lot of dead timber. It's a mess down there. And I just wondered how successful this would be, because Montana is Region 1, and you know
Yeah.
we get litigated more than anybody.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how successful can a group like this help loggers?
Well, there's been a number of groups, and I have some personal experience with the first one, that filed amicus briefs to support the Forest Service on some projects.
That's,
And it was unprecedented, frankly. And industry folks, back 3 counties in Montana, as diverse as Powell County and Lewis and Clark County. The state of Montana, both Fish, Wildlife Parks, DNRC filed an amicus, and then 28 others that were representing large environmental organizations that you normally wouldn't think would be supportive, because this involves harvesting of timber, but involved lots of different things. And, just different people. They filed an
I
amicus.
see people are coming to the table.
They are.
Never did. But in Oregon, they want to have like $100 million sawmills all over the
Yeah,
place
yeah.
to take a lot of this small timber. But nobody wants to invest in them because they're afraid of litigation again.
Right.
And you know that a lot of people, like the Alliance of the Wild Rockies, they're really bad for litigating. And are you seeing that they're coming to the table?
Yeah, a
Collaboration?
real encouraging thing is because of different organizations, and why the courts are paying attention to this now, is there's traction for these community collaborative you know, involved projects. There's a recent case over in Idaho, Federal District Judge Lodge, and I can't think of the name of the case, cited a collaboratively built, you know, group that helped, you know, with this project, and he ruled in the Forest Service in the agency's favor.
Well, that's,
Yeah, it's real good.
you know, there was a, I think it was the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation.
Yes.
Won a case at the
Yeah.
Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals in San Francisco, which was a first in a long time, and I think they're seeing that, you know, something has to be done with our forests.
Well, that's exactly right, and in fact, they sit on our council that oversees Montana Forest Collaboration Network. But there's been several amicus briefs filed now in Montana by collaborative groups. Recent ones, the Elkhorns, in supporting the Bureau of Land Management and supporting Forest Service projects. The Kootenai Forest Stakeholders, that's a real interesting group of people. I was in their meeting maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago and met with them, and as you can imagine, you know, you have Idaho Forest Group, and you have F.H. Stoltz, Land and Lumber, in the room, sitting there, you know, with the Montana Wilderness Association, Yak Valley Council, these different diverse groups. They filed an intervenor status, which is higher than an amicus, to have a place at the table in defending a decision that's at the Ninth Circuit now, waiting for a decision. And I think it'll probably be favorable. Also, Lincoln County also intervened for that project, which is good.
Oh, yeah.
What's the name of your website?
MontanaForestCollaboration.org. If you look on the back of this, you can see it. It's right. There it is. Right here.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
When you've got a group that's composed of diverse interests, and you're dealing with an issue that you basically can't pass on,
Right.
For lack of agreement, how do you have what tools do you use in terms of conflict resolution, or to come to some agreement with respect to some of these issues that you just can't pass over?
Right. That happens occasionally, and so I'm going to answer that in 2 parts.
Okay.
All right. The first one will be when a topic will come to us and say, we want you to take a position on this. Right now, these topics can come out of right or left field, you know, or center field. And somebody will say the Montana Forest Collaboration Network should do thus and such. And so we developed a protocol to manage that. Now, and then I'll get to the others.
Okay.
So in this case, where somebody submits something, and we've had a number of issues that come up, we take a written request, and somebody calls me and says, we're interested, we want you to do something about the Cottonwood decision, and write a letter to the congressional delegation members about that. First of all, we take that request and go, does this have anything to do with collaboration? If it doesn't, then it's not in our wheelhouse, right? It's a different thing. So that criteria is, whatever is being brought to us, does it promote, support, inhibit, or is it based on collaboration principles? And if it's not, then we're not going to, you know, then somebody else should take that issue up, not us. Second, if it goes through that pass, then we review the request, we share it with an advisory council, and a lot of groups are represented on the council, including Sun Mountain Lumber, Montana Wood Products Association, Pyramid, the Wilderness Society, the Wilderness Association, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, Kootenai Forest Stakeholders, so we have different collaborative members on this as well. And that group of people can take one of 3 positions. One, they can affirm that the MFCN will support a request in a manner relevant to the request. Now, I'll give you a good example of that. And we haven't had many that's gone in this direction. This whole fire borrowing issue? When I say that, do you know what I mean? Is how the Forest Service or the Bureau of Land Management, more than 50% of our budgets were being spent on fire activities, and you're robbing Paul to pay Peter, basically, is what the issue is. Because you're taking money from all your other programs, road maintenance, trails, wildlife, and you're spending that money to fight fire. So as that program grows, your other programs shrink, and people are going, geez, these campgrounds and these roads, or, these stands, or it's not looking good, Why aren't we doing some things?
You're saying, we do grant programs for private landowners that
Right.
can't, we do restoration work on their property.
Mm-hmm.
When there's no fires, there's a lot of money in the kitty, so we can file a grant and
Yeah,
get it
there you
in
go.
and clean up. But when all the money goes to fighting fire,
Exactly.
it dries up. And the landowner, some of their property is really in bad shape, and they
Yeah.
rely on these grants to
They
get
do.
them cleaned up.
They do.
So,
Well, this is an example where the council said, we are gonna write a letter and send it to the congressional delegation. We're not gonna tell them how to fix it. We're just gonna say, you need to work collaboratively, like we do, and find a solution. But that's your job. But we want you to do that. So that's a position you take.
Did I understand that there may be an appropriation bill that changes that this year, that the Forest Service will spend their budgeted amount of dollars on fire, and after that it will come out of
FEMA.
FEMA,
Yeah.
emergency.
That'll
Is that
happen-
right?
No, that'll happen in 2020.
Oh, it
But
hasn't
has not happened
happened
yet.
Okay,
But they
okay.
did authorize more funds for
Okay.
fighting fire.
Okay.
So then in the next couple of years, those funds will be available. But if it exceeds that amount, back to fire borrowing until 2020, and then it's changed.
So they give the Forest Service a blank check.
Well,
In a way it does.
Oh, yeah.
to cover the costs. Yeah. Now, as citizens, we all want the government to be responsive.
Well, the Forest Service is doing that on purpose. They're letting that burn on purpose. And I even got the head of DEQ in the state, he told me that the Forest Service calls up on certain fires and says, we want to manage this as a prescribed burn. And that's what they did last year. And so all those fires got big, they spent all that money. And they're lighting thousands of acres.
In some cases, it's true that program does exist. There's criteria that you're supposed to evaluate when you do that, so you don't have, problems, but you know how that works. There are inherent risks with fire. But
I see the
But
state
that's-
really gets after them though.
they have a different,
Program.
yeah, they do, and that agency used to have that, 10 a.m. policy ourselves. We grew up with that.
You didn't do it by 10 o'clock one day, it was 10 o'clock the next day.
Yeah, right.
And I fought a lot of fires.
You're supposed to catch them. Now, you don't catch them all. Even
No,
though
you
have
don't,
to-
you don't, but they could catch 90% of them if they get out there
And they
on
still
an initial
do.
attack.
Success rate is still 96, 98% of catching fires that are initial attack. There's a lot of firefighting goes on most people don't even know about, because you're dispatching your crews and you're in.
Well, that used to be, but not anymore. They didn't even put anybody on a little hogback. They fooled around down here, and we can prove it.
Yeah.
On the Myers Creek and everything, they just did nothing for days. But nobody was on Little Hogback for like until it took off and come over onto our district. And that was in a suppression area. And they just made the decision. And I got a letter from the Washington DC. She said that in 2009, they changed the policy to let these fires go.
In some cases, they do, in some cases,
It's getting to be the norm now, though, that they are.
Well, when fires get big, it can be problematic, as you all know. I have fire qualifications, I work with Ponson's team. Last year on a Lowell Peak fire, that was one of the most expensive fires, and last year was a horrible season. Horrible
Yeah, they could have put Lowell Peak out when it started.
Yeah, you know, and
This one up here they could have too. You read that letter from the man that lives up there?
Exactly.
He said it was 2 or 3 days before anybody got on it.
Exactly.
You don't put out fires that way.
No.
and some, but I'm not here talking
And there
about
were
the fire policy.
smoke jumpers sitting down there in Missoula, not doing anything.
I said, do they ever use smoke
Yes.
jumpers anymore? Do they?
Oh,
still?
yeah, every
I was
year.
wondering if they did.
Yeah, and you get jumped out. I mean, I put in a lot of requests.
Those are the things that aggravate us, you know.
Yeah, I understand that. You know, fire is a very difficult subject, and you don't catch them all. There's a small.
I realize that.
They get big.
I know that. I lost one.
Yeah.
I lost one in 17 years.
It
I was
happens.
down Rock Creek by the Neal Ranch, Barbara and Larry Clark's ranch down there. And we were doing some logging there because the fire was getting close to their ranch.
Right.
And right next to it was the Forest Service. One tree was on fire. There were 3 Forest Service guys around it. I said, aren't you going to put that fire out? And they said, no, we're not allowed to. They did tell me that.
Who told you that?
On the tax.
The Forest Service guy said, we can't put it out. We're
Why
told.
not?
Only if it went on the
Safety.
private property.
Safety.
If it only went
Yeah,
on the
that's
private
their
property. It
policy.
was one tree.
You read the county fire plan, and I don't know why the county agreed to it. That basically it says, we're gonna burn up the whole thing except for the houses.
Yeah, we see it all the time over
There's
here in
something
Granite County.
radically wrong.
Yeah.
We went,
It's
we-
horrible. It's-
we went to a fire with a 1,000-gallon water tank, and they tried to kick us off, the Forest Service. And the county came out with their 1,000-gallon water tank, and it was on our job, on Ann Sanders' ranch. We told them, we're staying. We kept and we put out a lot of grass fires, and so did the county. But they tried to kick us out, the Forest Service, with 2,000-gallon water tanks. That's all we had. I mean, it's really bad in Granite County. They just let it burn. We got so much proof about it.
It's a complicated subject, but as far as our network is concerned, case in point,
Down by Barbara Clark.
excellent example.
Yeah.
We took a position to tell a congressional delegation to fix this fire funding problem that needed to be fixed. And that was an example where we did take a position.
No,
We
they didn't fix
tell
it.
them how.
They didn't fix it, because they give them a blank check. The fires will just get worse now.
I hope not, but
Well, they will, because that's their policy.
What needs to happen is the policy at the national level needs to change.
Exactly,
And I wrote the chief about it.
yeah,
All you get is wishy-washy. You don't have anybody up there that'll do anything.
yep.
I'd like to be chief for about 2 years.
Well, the
I'm
only
so
way it's
excited.
going to be changed is through
Change some things,
coordination. That's where you're going to get to the people
I
on
was so
top.
excited at our next forest ranger, what was his name, Took or? what?
Tony took.
I said, oh, good, he's got a 4-year degree in forestry. But I guess there was a little incident where he had to resign. So I was disappointed in
Yeah,
that.
people are people.
Hey,
It's-
Tim, just one quick question. You're from Sealy, or you were a,
Yeah, I was ranger there for
okay.
20 years.
How did you feel about your people there having to breathe all that smoke all summer?
Well, I wasn't there during the fire season. In fact, when the team was asked to go there, I had to recuse myself because being a ranger there for 20 years, it wasn't my place to.
But was that
Get
good to
involved.
put that on those?
No,
people?
it's not, and you can't whitewash that. The effects of that kind of smoke with those people, and I've talked to the ranger about that, you know, there's no way that you come out on it, the end of going, this wasn't that a good thing. It wasn't a good thing, it was very difficult. You know, we will have fires, that's a fact. I mean, we're gonna have fire on our landscape, we always have, and we always will. That's not, you know, now how we manage it, that's a public debate. But it is difficult, and it affected the community, affected the economics, and it affected people's health. There's no.
It kills all our
It
beautiful
also
animals.
affects future management. You get these
It does.
huge, intense fires, you know, a lot of time, and I've seen it happen, it burned everything, the soil, so that nothing will come up for 100 years, you know.
Yeah.
Either that, or
Or
if
it
it's a little
washes
less,
down.
if it's a little less intense, and it's in lodgepole, the lodgepole will come in so thick you can't walk through it.
That's
And
happening.
in 100 years, you'll have the exact same thing happening again.
Yeah.
You know, we're not looking at, foresters should look at 100 to 150 to 200 years of management,
Yeah.
and they're not doing it.
When you look at old photographs around the state of Montana, you'll see a lot of, and I'm talking photographs from, late 1800s, early 1900s, you'll see a lot of evidence of fire on this landscape, a lot of it.
They didn't have big cats and stuff.
No, they
Clippers to
did.
build fire trails.
They
to
did.
slow it down.
They did.
They had
Back then, they
big
burned it
fires.
all, Minnesota had some huge fires
Yeah.
back then. But then, when they started managing the forest and cutting it, and breaking it up into smaller units, changing species, having some open areas, then they didn't have so much fire. Then they started putting out too far.
Yeah.
Maybe they started putting out too much fire. I won't argue that.
Yeah, yeah.
Prescribed fire has a place.
It has a place.
But this wildfire, these huge areas of wildfire, that doesn't have a place. That shouldn't happen anymore. We're supposed to manage.
Yeah.
We're supposed to manage the forest, not let it burn up.
Well, one thing, that we've all seen, and then we'll get off the subject of fire, but when I started my career, we'd have a big fire season every maybe 7 years in the Northern Rockies, about that. But since '88, the frequency and the severity of fires has increased. There's no denying it. Now, why has that happened? It's a combination of things, in my opinion. We don't have to talk about climate change, but something's happened. Who cares about who's at fault or if anybody's at fault? The climate's changed. We've all seen that in our lifetime. That's a factor. Insect and disease is an issue in our forest. Fuel accumulations is an issue in our forest. I think it's a combination of things that have made it more difficult, and policy.
There's fewer timber sales since 1988 too on the national forest.
The
A
insect
lot.
problem has gotten worse since we quit cutting timber. It used to be when you cut timber, the bark beetles would move into the slash. They'd move from one to another, and I've seen it happen.
Sure.
So you got less out, and when we kept doing that, then they moved out in the live trees and started killing the live trees.
Yeah, you see, but I've seen cases prior to '88 where mountain pine beetle up in the flathead was taking out all drainage.
It can do it. I know it can.
It happens.
I've seen it in Ponderosa pine down on the big one.
Sure,
The same way.
the spruce bark beetle in the '50s really came on, and it did a lot of damage. But
England spruce in the Colorado in the 40s during World War II.
yeah,
Really, it wiped out millions of acres down there.
but we're getting into forestry nerd talk.
Yeah,
we could talk about insects.
I'm a forester. I can't help that.
I can't help myself.
Oh, one other question.
I let myself go.
One more on
Yeah.
fire. Okay, why would they go out and light, they lit 2,000 acres, which they didn't need to. They burned up in SMZs and spruce stands that were 300 plus years old, just lit them off. They hadn't burned in 300 years,
So
okay?
where fire are you talking
A little hogback.
about?
Okay.
That's Sapphire Complex.
So then they go through units that I administered, and we had reprod going, and they just went through there and lit it, and tried to burn it. It didn't burn that good. But back in the day, we left a lot of these little, we didn't have to, but the loggers and I, we left the little patches of alpine fir, and to break up like a clear cut.
Yeah.
And it looked really nice, and the deer were in there, and it was beautiful. And you can take a picture of the pintlers in the background, and they went in there. And because the alpine fir would, these are little patches of, side of the room. Lit them off, and it burned almost every one of them. And you could tell that's exactly what they did. Why would they do that? See, these Ponchins crew, they don't care. They don't care about Montana. And I've worked with those crews that come from out of state when I was working with the Forest Service. And they even told me they didn't care. So.
It's a mixed bag. I've worked with many teams over the years, and
Diversity is good for wildlife, if you want to talk collaboration. The more diversity you have,
Exactly.
yeah,
the better the wildlife
Right.
is. You have a bigger variety of wildlife, they have more food,
But
yeah.
the
But I
question
can
is,
answer
why
all
would
this.
they go and light natural regeneration, and that took a lot of money. I mean, we got to count the cones, the loggers had to make sure the cones were there to get reproduction, and they burned up the little leaf patches like I was telling you. Why would they do that?
The only thing I can do is speculate, because, you know, I wasn't on the incident and don't know. But most of us were trained to go in direct and you know, foot in the black and fight fire. You see a lot more indirect today. And sometimes you have to do that. There was indirect firefighting when you guys were in, you know.
We used to fight it at night though, when it was
Used to
cool
fight-
down and
right,
we could
right.
get out there and do
We
something.
used to do all of that stuff.
And not
There's a lot more indirect fighting. And that's when some of those kind of you're lighting off big areas. And one of the reasons, I'll just conclude with this, and you all know that, when you're fighting fire, the investment you make is you want the highest probability of success. There were places on the Lowell Peak fire where there wasn't, the highest probability of success wasn't to go direct and then retreat. Direct and retreat. It was like, this is the best primary line we have, and we're going to use it.
They were talking apples and oranges here.
Yeah, yeah.
If they'd have hit it when it was small, they could have went direct easily. And a lot of people know that. A lot of
Yeah.
people know that Lowell Peak area know that. And I mean, you could tell, you could see it on the news. And so we're talking.
Yeah,
but
right.
once you get it into the project stage, yeah, you're right. I mean, you got to do different things.
You all know that when you have a dry lightning storm come through and you get more lightning, you do rain, and you get a lot of fires. And when I was ranger, we were dealing with fires that we couldn't even get to for 2 weeks. Not because we didn't want to. All the jumpers were out. All our fire crews were on fires. We were all committed. We were doing triage. We're getting the low valley ones, and those up there on Montour or Spread Ridge are going to burn because we don't have, there are no more.
I was on a fire.
Troops.
I was on a fire on the Salmon way back, and they were going to let us go home. And we got a lightning storm, and they had 150 fires
Yeah.
the next morning, and they wouldn't let us go home.
So those things happen.
Those things happen.
Last year, we had a wet spring here.
You know,
let
they can
those
have,
fires burn.
Yeah.
and you're going to lose some of them. That
Some of
way.
them you're gonna lose.
I'm well aware of that.
Yeah,
But to
I mean-
deliberately let them go, I can't understand.
You know, I mean, we could talk about the Sundance fire, we could talk about Sleeping Child. A lot of resources committed to those fires. They still got big. Because when, you know, when the wind and the temperature and fuel moistures and everything intersect, there's nothing you can do but keep out of harm's way. And that fire's gonna burn.
Excuse me,
I had a question here. We've had 2 fires on our property, but I'm not here to talk about
Yeah, yeah.
fires. My question is, I want to hear about the concrete examples of where these collaborative groups have successfully
Sure.
changed the direction of the
Good
U.S. Forest
question.
Service.
Yeah. So I'll give you 3 personal examples that I was involved with in the right around Seeley Lake, but, you know, permit me. But there are other groups that are working on things that they could give you examples of there. Some projects that we worked on, Holt Summit, and when I talked to you about the collaborative groups submitted an amicus to support us. We treated fuels reduction, Augie, another thing called Augie Fuels right next to the community, was worked on, and then another one called Horseshoe West.
How big a sales were these, or how big?
They vary.
How much timber did you take?
On Coal Summit, that project was about 7 million feet.
That's quite a bit.
Saw log value.
So what were the issues involved there?
Well, these were all fuel reduction, and incidentally, when the Rice Ridge fire burned, it didn't touch any of them. It didn't get into them, because I wanted to see how effective our fuels treatments were going to be. But all of those projects were, the collaboratives were involved in helping us, you know, supporting that kind of work. Now, I don't want you to think that this is just about timber sales, because those projects also, you know, improved roads, improved trails, improved water quality, because when you're putting best management practices in the roads, and maintaining those roads and, you know, right-sizing structures so that you're making the resource better. And you're improving wildlife habitat in some areas. So it did lots of things. Pardon?
Get the roads fixed up and they lock it off.
Well, hopefully, you know, when you're making an investment in roads, you're not doing that.
You should have a basic network of good roads
Yeah,
and
right.
the rest of them close them off. I don't have any problem with
I just
that.
got a question for you when you were talking about Granite. I'm gonna jump back to that, get on fire for a little bit.
Yeah, let's do, because I don't want to just focus on that.
Yeah, when you were talking about the rack, which I think is a good deal, but like last year, the rack committee, the Forest Service took authority to take the 40,000 that we usually get, okay? We'll apply for it to put it towards the use of a road to go
Right.
somewhere
Right,
that we're
right.
gonna rebuild or,
Mhm.
you know, help the county put a bridge in or
Right,
something.
right.
Well, they took the 40,000 last year and put it towards this flap.
Towards the what?
A flap, it's a federal road, it's a Forest Service road up at Georgetown that they're trying to give the Granite County. But we gotta come up with a match of like 180,000, cause they can't take care of that road, but yet they want us, the taxpayers, to give up 180,000, a match, cause they can get $3 million. to
Is
fix
that the
the road.
Job Corps road you're
So-
talking about?
Huh?
Job Corps road you're talking about?
No.
It's around
No,
Georgetown.
it's up.
Georgetown, right?
They got a big meeting up. Anyway, how does the Forest Service, how can they take like that 40,000 and put it towards that when they want us to all be in rack? And that was supposed to be used as towards, like, say, going up Max, or going up Black Pine where you're going into Forest Service ground. And I know that highway up there, but they're using that as their own discretional use. I
Well-
don't think that's right.
Technically, what happens when you don't have, you know, the secure rural school authorities that we do have now, thanks to the omnibus bill, 25% of the federal receipts that are generated on national forests from all, you know, timber sales, livestock grazing, recreation permits, etc., go back to the counties, to the state, and the state does the distribution. Forest Service has no control over that, none. That's not done by anybody in the Forest Service.
But
That
how do they-
25% fund goes in that direction, they don't control it.
I know, but they got so much control on saying where this money can go, because we gotta bag them to put it towards, say like, we're trying to get money for your road, okay? I'm just using it as an example. Anyway, a road that leads into a Forest Service or access into a Forest Service thing, they're the ones that tell you yay or nay in RAC. You go to their meetings and they say, well, we don't know if that's for that, but yet they'll do it up here. So they got the say.
Well, the Forest Service, you know, doesn't control the RAC per se.
They got a lot of control on it.
Yeah, but they go to that committee, and the committee makes the decisions about how the money's being spent. I've been to many of those meetings, and oftentimes would work with the county commissioner to make an improvement on a road.
Well, we
And-
sat right there and argued, and I voted against it as a county commissioner, and they looked right at us, oh, we can, and then they telling everybody they're putting up 40,000. Well, that shouldn't have been used for that.
It shouldn't, well, if that's the case, I bet it
That's my
was,
opinion. Maybe I'm wrong.
it probably wasn't 25% funds, it must have been some other funds, because they don't even touch those funds. They don't have access to
Well,
it.
I got the stuff downstairs to show you that they
Yeah.
use the RAC money to study on this road.
Okay, I want to just, if I may, what you're talking about, the meeting that they're having up in Georgetown Lake, right? Okay. To me, our group should be involved with that.
What's that?
Our group, the Forest Advisory Committee, whatever you want to call it, should be involved with that. We should be up there now. Like Tim said, there's a lot of variables that cause problems. And we have problems with the forest. 60% of Granite County is public land, forests. So we should be involved with all of this, not just the fires, but it comes down to the piss-poor management of our forest. And I have to go along with, you're talking collaborative.
Yeah.
Now, I want to know, where does coordination process fit in with your group?
When you say coordination, what do you mean?
Huh?
What does that mean to you?
Coordination means it's Congress, Congress mandates the coordination process so that government to government, this is fine having collaboration where environmental groups, stakeholders, everybody sit down and, avoid conflict and come to a consensus. That's fine.
Yeah.
But then that's presented to local government, and then local government sits down with the agencies, Forest Service, BLM, whatever, on the same level. So that it's not any longer that they do what they want. The agencies do what they want. We have no say, as the commissioners always say. No, it's not going to happen that way. Because if the commissioners tell the BLM, Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, whatever, no, we don't particularly like the project that you're doing, we've got to correct it because this is what we want. And the agency has to back down. Okay? And it's kind of funny how everybody's pushing for collaboration, but we're not talking about coordination, which is more powerful because it's government to government. And the government has the local government does have the final say. And it's kind of interesting how the collaborative groups, it's always like, what do you mean? What do you mean? And I kind of figure that the collaboration groups know exactly what coordination is.
I got one comment, though, I want to say, I'm afraid you're getting all the bashing.
That's all right. If you're a ranger, you're used to it, right?
But I just don't want you to think that we brought you here just to bash the hell out of you.
Does the
okay? I
beaver
appreciate
head,
what you're doing, I apologize
Thanks.
for like
No
me
worries.
coming on you and that.
Yeah, that's all right.
does the Beaverhead Deer Lodge Forest have a forest advisory board as such?
No,
We had them years ago in
Yeah.
Colorado.
no,
We'd have representatives from everybody.
right. They
And
were,
they'd come in and we'd talk about things, and we've resolved a lot of that stuff before it ever got started.
they work with RACs and that are,
What's a rack?
Resource Advisory Committee. They're patterned after what the BLM has. So, a collaboration, I'm gonna get back to your question, because I haven't forgotten. I'm gonna get sidetracked a little bit. You can't, a RAC has the official approval of the administration to allocate or, make decisions.
Well,
Our collaborative groups don't have that.
the forest advisory boards we had
Yeah.
didn't have that authority.
Right.
The Forest Service made the final decision, I guess, unless they got sued.
Right.
But you could iron out most of your problems before they ever got started.
And that's the thing.
I set up a lot of grazing was the big thing. I was on the heaviest grazing district in Region 2. And grazing isn't a popular thing in a lot of places.
Right.
But we resolved a lot of things, and we'd set up demonstration allotments and show people how it could be done properly, and it just started working a whole lot better.
Well, that's the way it should work. People, that work for the agency, I don't care what level of government, work for the public, and you should know the community, you should know the people that you're working with, they should know you, they should know the county commissioners or the district ranger or whatever that position is, like they would as school superintendent. And you have that communications and you build trust with people. And that's what you should do.
I
So
think
you
that's
don't
the problem,
drift
though, the
apart.
trust,
yeah,
everybody's
yeah.
so gun shy that it's kind of on all levels.
Well, that's what process is. Process is there because it's a substitute for trust. An official, an elected official, an appointed official, whoever, they're not trusted, so they build in all this process.
I'll tell you how this works. We were just involved in a deal with Fish, Wildlife, and Park.
Yeah.
And they're going to put in many fishing access thing up at Bearmont. And county commissioners were there, the sheriff was there, the county attorney was there, about 7 local ranch owners and chalet owner were there. We all said, please don't do it because it's a huge drug problem there, okay? They did it anyway. They're gonna do it anyway. They don't care. And that's the problem also dealing with the Forest Service. You can stand there and say, hey, you know, this is what's gonna happen. And, you know, we're gonna, you thin this hillside to 12-foot crown spacing and you're gonna get landslides and et cetera. That's not a good idea. And they're gonna do it anyway.
Well, you know, excuse me, you brought that up, okay? And right now I've been working with some people in this county. You can sue them, okay? You can sue them because they did not follow the coordination process. And I've been talking to somebody who had something to do with it. What's his name, Zoe? And I've been talking to him, and he's kind of interesting because he doesn't want to talk over the phone. No, he doesn't want email. I asked him for all the documentation regarding when they met, when agency, all this information. He refuses to give it to me. He wants to talk about it or talk in person. It's because, excuse me, it's because it doesn't exist. Now there's a lawsuit. I mean, you can use the coordination process if they don't follow it, and I don't think they did with Bearmouth. They did not follow it, and they damn well know it. And the county can sue them.
Yeah, let's get back
So,
on track.
yeah, we're
But
kinda-
see, nobody wants to talk about that.
Good point.
Yeah, so we're kind of wandering around on different topics and different issues, and I want to get back to what the Montana Forest Collaboration Network is about. It's about providing, again, a diverse group of people working together to provide recommendations to the agency.
How do you get it going,
Give
this
up.
one? I guess I want to know.
That's what you guys are in the process of forming, and take a look at some of those papers. That'll help tell you how to get going. Now, to be a member, and this is to get back to the question you had asked, where people have differences, you know, how does this work? How do you resolve those? When you get into a room like that and you're not all on the same page, because like it or not, you know, we have different opinions or different interpretations of what the law says. And the courts sort it out. When we may not like the decision, but they have the authority to do that. So a collaborative group, you know, there's just some real fundamental things that make them work. Is one, they're transparent in how they work. They're inclusive. In other words, it's not like 10 people that all think alike.
So I have a question on inclusion.
Yeah.
What's an effective number in a collaborative group? Because our number is 7. I personally would like to see like 12 to 15 on our group to include everybody.
That's your decision. Yeah,
That's just up to.
That's up to you to do
But
that.
to be effective, do you think like 12, 15 is unwieldy?
No.
Okay.
No, I think that's pretty typical. Some are much larger than that. And of course, the larger you get, the harder it is, right? This is democracy. Democracy is not an easy thing. And a lot of people that come to collaboratives and they listen to people that have different values, it's can give up going, it's too hard, I don't like it. This person doesn't think the way I do. That's the world we live in.
But don't you think if we did form a collaborative that we would have more power and they'd take us
Yeah.
more seriously if we did include
Diverse.
a really diverse group, and
Right.
not just Granite County residents, but people that use Granite County forests or even,
Yeah, you know, again, a lot of collaboratives think in terms of how RACs are formed. They're deliberately formed to be diverse in their interests. You know, you have so many people that are users, recreators, or conservationists, and you have people in the industries, and you have citizens at large. Can you try to find a group of people that reflect society's values? And it's, again, it's not always easy. But if you're a group that, and there are a number, and let's say all you care about is wilderness, right? Well, that's not going to be a collaborative because that's not diverse.
right,
Or if you had a group that's all they care about is livestock raising, Well, that's not gonna be diverse, because they're a single interest group. And that's fine, that's all right. Citizens can participate in those things, but that won't really fit a collaborative definition. And so the principles of being inclusive, that is allowing diversity, now there's frankly, there's some people you wouldn't. They're so strident in their views that they're not going to participate.
So if you have anti-government people on, say, Agenda 21, how do you handle that?
Well, you know, there are people that have those kind of different opinions, but people that take real, you know, maybe polarized views of the world or different views of the world usually don't work well in a collaborative, because you're trying to find common ground. And if you can't do that, then, you know, probably collaboration or that model isn't going to work. So here's the principles that we have in our charter to be a member. One, the collaborative processes can advance the realization of public interests across a full range of land ownerships and natural resources. So you have a faith or belief that you're trying to advance, you know, public's interest by participating and being involved, as different as they are. Two, collaborative processes across Montana operate independently based on community interest and are locally driven. So, you know, they reflect the area and the interest of that area. Third, our network encourages an autonomy of collaborative groups and celebrates the diversity of practices across the groups. We don't tell a group how to be. We don't tell the Kootenai Forest stakeholders, this is what you need to do. That's up to them. It's not up to us. Or any of the collaborative groups in Montana. That's what they're about. We're not the mothership or the big brother or sister of these groups. They're interested in their communities and their landscapes and their watersheds, and they're trying to work with the agencies to do things.
Will collaboration be enough to restore our forests out there?
It's a move in the right direction.
But it's a massive problem out there.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been out there, you can't even walk through
Right.
the forest.
Well, it's better than
Then what?
the status quo. So let me finish. We promote, and this is important, meaningful, respectful, civic dialogue on natural resource issues. You all have been there, you want to be in a room where the loudest voice wins. It's like, that doesn't work. It needs to be a respectful process. You got to sit down with people and be able to talk about differences of opinions. Because, like it or not, that's the world. We all have our own opinions and our own interpretations of things. And there's people that agree with us and some that don't. But if we're ever going to get anywhere in this world, we got to learn how to get along with people. And leave the swords at the door. Because that doesn't work. It goes back to why I believe in this process, because it's better than the status quo. It's better than fighting it out in court and not winning anything. If people come together, and that's why, frankly, I think both parties, the majority parties, see that when citizens can come together and craft a solution, that's kind of appealing. And the agencies understand that too. Now, the agencies have evolved. When I started with the agency, we knew what was best. We had the oracles. We could talk the language. We knew Latin. And we told the public what good forestry was. And then we stopped listening. Frankly, this is my opinion, to what the public, not in all locations or not in all places. But we kind of got, we were deciding what was right because we were the trained foresters and we knew better than you all. And we knew how to do it right. We stopped listening. And the public didn't like that. And they started telling the agency through Congress that you need to listen. And so legislation was passed. And so, okay, we started listening. We'd have public forums, people would come, they would talk, and we'd go, thank you. And we go do our thing. But that was our, you know, we were listening, right? And then the public wanted more than it. When we were clear cutting on a pretty significant scale, and when we were terracing, the public said, we don't like it. They told the agency that. We don't like it. And we said it's good forestry. Made good sense to foresters that were trained in silviculture. This is the way you do it. But we stopped listening to the public that kept saying, well, we don't like it. It may be good, but we don't like it. And they changed the law. And so now the agency doesn't do that anymore, because had we paid attention to what you, the citizens, want, and I think Gifford Pinchot, the father of American forestry, really understood that well. He knew that the agency and the rangers and the public had to have this relationship with the community, because after all, that's who was supporting them, and vice versa. But when we get away from that, it doesn't work. And I think collaboration is a different way of engaging. It's not this perfunctory check off, I listened, that's good, good enough. It's not like that. And now I believe the agency really is paying attention. Not in all cases, maybe.
I don't think so.
Not everywhere. Not everywhere.
I don't believe so.
But I don't think it's absolute.
No, it's not.
But in some
fact, I don't think
cases,
they listen at all. But
in
Now
some
the
cases,
public is saying we don't want to burn the forest, so they don't listen.
well, you know, so this gets back to that complication. Public's saying a lot
Come in
of
a
things.
circle, you know, it's.
Public says a lot of different things.
Well,
But I
here you got the fishing
may-
access. Granite County said we don't want it,
Yeah.
right?
it may vary in
So
that
what?
area too.
We got it.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So that's collaboration. It
There's
doesn't
going to
work.
be differences. Any one of us as a citizen could say, I want the Forest Service to do this or that. They're not going to do it.
No, but the collaboration, they have to do it if they're listening to the government,
There's
Well-
areas
the
that
local
have-
government,
Yeah,
see?
you're talking about.
I wish I had another booklet. Do we have any booklets in our file cabinet, the box downstairs,
Booklet on what?
about coordination that was handed out? Maybe you can give it to
Well-
Tim and he could bring it back to collaborations.
Tim, who does all the restoration work to clean the forest up?
Oh, that's contracted. The
Like-
agency
Who do
uses
they contract out?
No, he's up.
mills, logging companies, service contractors. You know, it could be for trails, planting, thinning, harvesting, watershed restoration. It could be any number of activities, but that's.
Have you ever
contracted.
talked to like Sherman Anderson? I was curious.
Yeah, I know
what he-
Sherman.
How does he feel about collaboration?
They're supportive, and in fact, Tony Coulter sits, yeah, Tony is on the council that oversees this, and also is co-chair of the Beaverhead Deer Lodge.
Okay, and I
Black
know
Working
Gordy,
Group.
and like our outfit is certified under Sustainable
SFI.
Forest Initiative,
Yeah.
SFI, yeah. And Gordy's also just.
Yeah, absolutely.
He likes that. There's 3 mills that are certified under SFI. Is Sherman Anderson certified under SFI, do you know?
Yeah,
He is.
yeah, I think,
I know Gordy is and Stoltz is.
yeah, I don't know that RY is,
Okay.
FH Stoltz is, Weyerhaeuser is.
I know in Idaho they have a stricter certification over there. I forgot what it's,
FSC.
SFC.
Yeah,
Little
that's a
stricter.
different certification. A lot of
Yeah.
industry is not in FSC, but
Yeah.
some are.
Okay.
Anyway, you know, I'm sorry I lost track of something, but if people can't adhere to these principles, they shouldn't belong in a collaborative group. If you can't be respectful and listen to somebody that you disagree with, and, you know, be polite enough to, okay, so we disagree. It's all right to say that. But we shouldn't be disagreeable, right?
What do the environmentalists want out of this?
Now, there are some extreme folks, I was in a meeting recently, where said this collaboration is nothing but the Forest Service cutting trees. So I want you to see the view of this world. That's how some people see it. They're not going to participate with it because they think this is all about harvesting timber and in doing that. Well, that's not what it's about. But that's the way they see it, and they want to characterize it that way. It's just
I see.
a bunch of bad stuff going on, just another excuse to cut timber. And then there's other groups that might be very suspect. Oh, this is just environmentalists having a run of it. It's not that either.
I know in California, the environmentalists are pushing for logging and big time, thinning the forest down there so that when the bugs hit, it won't kill all these other trees.
Sure.
We
They
need,
have no place to put them. They're
we need
cutting
some of
trees,
those over
trucking
here.
them on the road.
Well, you know, the Wilderness Society and the Montana Wilderness Association and Wildlife Federation have actually supported some active forest management, and that's good to see.
that would be,
There are groups that will not, they've told me,
yeah, I know.
if there's any harvesting, no.
That would
They
be
don't
my
participate.
question, though. If you don't use logging as a tool, what else are you gonna use to manage these huge stands?
It's
I see all
massive.
this black timber out here, and,
Yeah.
All blown
and I think,
over.
you know, it's taken 40 years, probably taken 40 years to build up. I drive up here and I see all of these beautiful stands of new stuff coming up when they were active logging, and they're healthy, they're producing a lot of oxygen, you know, and these old forests, they're stagnant. They don't take in much carbon dioxide or put out much oxygen. All they are is a hazard for bugs and fire.
I think that most people in the collaborative would agree that do participate. Thank you.
And this is what bothers me so
Yeah.
badly as a forester. I don't think we ought to cut it all off. I've never said that. I love wilderness.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
But it should be true wilderness.
So, no, active forest management plays a role in collaborative groups and people that sit across the table from one another who, like I said, used to fight, can agree that that's okay. But you want to have interest for other groups too, you know, the people that are
I understand
concerned
that.
about
I understand
wilderness.
that. I was a district ranger for 17
Sure.
years. And I worked with advisory groups. I started the first road control or road management in the United States on the Blanco district down in Colorado.
Yeah.
But I worked on it for 3 years before we ever put it in effect. We met with everybody, you know, people from all over the state. And there were some places, what they had done, there had been uranium mining down there. And they'd taken a dozer, you know, and just gone up the hill like this to get to their pits. And they were washing out and things like that. And, you know, I explained all that. We left a system of roads so the hunters could get in and other people, and then closed those others. If you needed to open a temporary road, you could do it and then close it again. And I never had any static over it.
Because you have to work with lots of different people and lots of different interests.
It
And
can
that's
be,
the important thing.
it can be done, and it ought to be the district ranger that's doing it.
Well, here's the deal about collaborative groups. They cannot be run by the Forest Service. This is a citizen.
No, they can't, but a district ranger could minimize a lot of the static
Sure.
that goes on.
I agree.
If they would get out and talk to the public.
Yeah, absolutely. I think any official, and again, I don't care if they're a hospital administrator or the school superintendent or whatever, you have to work with people, because this is people business.
I worked with them for 30 years.
Yeah. So I would encourage you, if you do this, you gotta be diverse, you have to have reflective different interests.
Relaxing.
I'm relaxed. I'm
Check
very
out the
relaxed.
sponsors,
Okay, did I answer your question?
More or
first
less.
two.
Sometimes you can't reach a conclusion. Wilderness study areas, for the most part, was one that there was enough differences in the collaborative groups, you know, we're not gonna take a position on this. You know, now, we wrote this informational paper and an op-ed piece that went to all the newspapers in Montana that said, we think that when you're managing public resources, this is to the congressional delegation, that you need to work collaboratively. You need to work with citizens, so that when you're making recommendations, it reflects citizen involvement in this way. Now, the public at large, anybody has a say on any subject. Anybody does. This doesn't replace this or that. It doesn't have any special legal authorization to do something. It is an effective way to engage the government and reflect citizen involvement, a diversity of interests.
Having been involved in a number of collaborative groups
Yeah.
myself, and having dealt with issues that are tough to reach consensus on. I found that often there are situations where a group can take a position on an issue easier by having a number of different voices expressed in an opinion on a subject. And that way, the group as a whole becomes a much more trusting and functional organization.
Absolutely.
So if the various differing positions are all expressed in the statement that they make about an issue, then everyone feels like they've been listened to and that they have a voice.
That's right, absolutely.
So there are ways to do that.
Absolutely, that's hugely important. There's a person over in Spokane area, if you followed this business, you would know it. His name's Mike Peterson, and he leads the Lands Council out of Spokane. And that organization was as difficult as the Alliance or Sarah Jane's outfit, or you name them, Wild West Institute, you name them. And that's where Mike was at. And he was fighting and appealing and suing the agency. He's a different person today. He supports the Forest Service. He went from being in public management. He went from being somebody who used to battle to somebody who's thinking, you know, we need to do some management here. This is good stuff. And so a lot of that came about because of people sitting down, listening to one another, and going, that person isn't such a bad person. They have this belief, I have this belief. That's okay. I mean, isn't that, we all have it. No one's going to agree 100% on anything. That's a fact. Even people that think like you. You're not going to agree on everything. But when people sit down and learn from one another, their positions can be more informed. And that's what this business is all about. And it is a more constructive way to do business, I think. And you're right, if you have a local ranger or whoever that, you know, understands that, then that's better. That's good, makes it easier. But anyway, any other questions?
I've got one.
Yes,
You mentioned that you guys put this out.
we did.
Where do you get the money to do things like
We
this?
have several sponsors. Is it on the back? Look at the back page.
That's a good question.
I think I show them. So the Forest Service, BLM, the NRC.
Oh, Cinnabar.
Yeah, here's our
So
sponsors.
so we should, this group that we have, we should be trying to get sponsors for things?
No,
No?
that's who helps us with put on workshops and do some things. But you see how diverse.
The Wilderness Society,
Yeah.
Wood Products, Foresters, Nature Conservancy, DNRC.
Yeah.
To become where you can get this book, do you have to join like you guys, or we're trying to get our own thing going?
Yeah, no, you don't have to
You know what I'm
join.
saying, just that, it'd sure be nice if they could, you know, we send us this stuff when stuff comes in, so we're kind of all,
Right,
you know what I'm saying, that they can.
because it's a gradual process, and then we'll be in the loop if we decide to join.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you've got my email.
Oh, I sure
address,
do.
And you know, all this information is free. There's no cost, there's no fee, there's nothing.
I'm just saying it'd be nice, you know, when new stuff comes in on some of these letters and that we never see, you know, because we're just getting started. If something comes in where you could email it over to one of us or something.
Right,
so we
'cause
can
I'm
have
going
it
to
for a
be in
meeting.
touch.
All right.
Yeah, you can.
Right, I'll just be in touch with Tim.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody can participate. The only thing is, you know, you got to agree to these principles, and if you can agree to those principles, no worries, you're in. That's our charter, and incidentally, the charter's on the website too. But the organization is filled with a lot of good folks that really care. They don't all believe the same thing, but they're trying to make a difference and do something positive.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it. We're the ones that deserve very good watch because the citizens that show up and get the work done.
Did you give us a copy of no, that little thing you just read about what you need to do to get along?
Oh, yeah, it's on our way. I didn't make a copy, but I'll give you my copy.
Yeah, that'd
Give it to add it to our group.
You got it.
Thank you, Heidi,
Yeah.
that's a great idea.
Thank you.
And, the other thing, I was listening to things we do. We have that website and Facebook page and Twitter, and we put on information we think would be useful to groups. And I work with individual groups. If a group's having an issue about something, myself or somebody else will go and help them. And most recently, I've worked with the Bitterroot, the Kootenai Forest stakeholders, Sanders County Collaborative on different issues that they're dealing with. So we do one-on-one stuff. Doesn't cost a thing.
That would be really nice.
Yeah. So anything we can do, that's what we're about.
Okay, sounds good. Good meeting.
Yeah.
Thanks
And thank you guys.
Thanks for being so
Thanks for
nice.
everybody.
Well, no problem. I mean, incidentally,
Well, that's a good guy, bad guy approach.
the Forest Service doesn't own the land. The public owns the land. We work for the public. We're public servants. That's supposed to mean something. Now, on the other hand, that doesn't mean that any citizen that comes up with you tells you this or that, you're supposed to do that, because you're governed by rules and
They used to tell me, I'm paying your wages,
Yeah,
you do
right.
what I tell you.
Right. And you hand them back 4 cents and then you say, that's your contract.
I handed him a penny, and said, okay.
There you go. No, but that's the way we should, as agency people, that's, ultimately we work for the public.
I understand your viewpoint, I agree with you 100%.
Used to do it.
Huh? I used to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had 30 years of it,
Right.
of doing that, of working with the public, and I got along fine. I never had anybody wishing that I'd leave the district when I left. Most of them say, can you stay on a little longer? Because I would work with people. And we had arguments. I don't say that. We did, but we settled them, and I think a good administrator will do that. There's not very many good administrators, in my opinion, left in the Forest Service.
All right, thanks so much.